This is Sable with Unsealed Evidence, and today we're stepping into a case that changes you the moment you hear it. The story of 11-year-old Gannon Stauch is emotional, devastating, and unforgettable. If this is your first time hearing it, prepare yourself. This is the story of a child whose life was stolen far too soon. Let's unseal this. Gannon was sensitive, anxious, gentle, the kind of kid who needed reassurance to feel safe. But on January 27, 2020, the person he was supposed to trust the most became the person he had the most to fear. And what happened that day inside a quiet Colorado home would tear apart an entire family and shake a community to its core. That morning, Gannon Stauch, his stepmother, told everyone that Gannon wasn't feeling well. She said she kept him home from school. And later, she said she took him out for errands. A neighbor's surveillance camera caught them getting into the SUV together. Gannon climbed in beside her, and that was the last time anyone saw him alive. Hours later, that same SUV pulled back into the driveway. But this time, only Letitia stepped out. No Gannon, no explanation, nothing that resembled a normal day. But instead of panicking or calling for help, Letitia reported him missing hours later, with a story that already didn't make sense. She said he walked to a friend's house. Then she said she wasn't sure where he went. Then she said he ran away. And the tone of her voice didn't match a mother searching for a missing child. She sounded irritated, not frightened, defensive, not desperate. And every parent listening felt it. Something was wrong. While Letitia told shifting stories, Gannon's biological mother arrived in Colorado, and the difference between them was night and day. She stood in front of cameras with swollen eyes, shaking hands, and a voice that kept breaking under the weight of terror. She wasn't performing. She was a mother whose child was gone. The community rallied. Volunteers searched fields, ditches, wooded areas. People shared his photo non-stop. Everyone hoped the story would end with Gannon coming home. But behind closed doors, investigators were seeing things that made their stomachs turn. Inconsistencies, missing hours, movements that didn't fit Letitia's claims. And then they searched the house. That was the moment everything changed. Inside Gannon's bedroom, investigators found blood evidence, signs of violence, signs of cleanup attempts, patterns that didn't match an accident, traces that showed a struggle no child should ever experience, especially not in the place where they were supposed to feel safest. As investigators analyzed more evidence, phone data, vehicle mileage, timestamps, routes, the truth started forming its own shape. And it didn't matter how many stories Letitia told. It didn't matter how angry she got when questioned. It didn't matter how much she tried to shift blame. The evidence spoke louder than she ever could. Meanwhile, social media exploded. Some posts were compassionate, others were cruel, and many were filled with unconfirmed rumors, people saying she'd always seemed off, that she was jealous, that she resented Gannon's needs. None of those claims were proven, but they showed something important. People sensed darkness long before the truth came out. The investigation led investigators to one heartbreaking conclusion. Gannon hadn't walked away from that home. He hadn't run off. He hadn't wandered into danger. Something violent happened inside that house. And everything Letitia said afterward looked like an attempt to run faster than the truth. Then came the most devastating discovery of all. A suitcase found beneath a bridge in Florida, hundreds of miles from home. Inside were the remains of a little boy who should have been playing video games, laughing in his living room, or asking what was for dinner. When the news broke that it was Gannon, it felt like the nation exhaled in grief all at once. Finding him brought answers, but no comfort. The violence he suffered, the distance he was taken, the way he was discarded. It broke people in ways they didn't expect. Mothers held their children closer. Fathers clenched their jaw. Strangers cried over a boy they had never met, but loved through his photos and story. Before investigators even announced her as a suspect, Letitia was already unraveling. She did interviews where she sounded annoyed, irritated, even offended that people were questioning her story. She blamed everyone but herself: neighbors, police, strangers online, anyone who kept asking the one question she couldn't answer. Where is Gannon? As the evidence mounted, investigators grew certain she knew exactly what happened. They watched her movements, her searches, her mile-by-mile choices, and when they finally made the decision to arrest her, it wasn't based on one moment. It was based on an avalanche of truth she couldn't outrun. In early March 2020, Letitia Stauch was taken into custody. What should have been a straightforward transport turned into its own bizarre chapter. During the drive, she tried to escape law enforcement, kicking, fighting, attempting to bolt from the vehicle. Not the behavior of an innocent woman. The behavior of someone terrified the truth had finally caught her. Her arrest confirmed what the community already feared. This wasn't a missing child case anymore. This was a homicide. A child murdered inside his own home. And as investigators continued piecing together the timeline, they discovered evidence showing Gannon's body had been moved, transported, and disposed of far from Colorado. For Gannon's mother, the confirmation was shattering. She stood in front of reporters with a grief that cracked the air around her. Her face was swollen from crying. Her voice trembled. Every part of her looked like a mother who had just been handed a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The world felt her pain, and still, Letitia continued to deny everything. She pushed new stories, wild accusations, claims that changed by the hour. She tried to paint herself as the victim of an unfair investigation. But the truth didn't bend for her. The evidence stayed the same. Brutal, undeniable, heartbreaking. When investigators finally reconstructed the timeline, the picture was horrifying. They believed Gannon was violently attacked inside his bedroom. The blood evidence showed trauma no child should ever endure. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a moment of panic. It was deliberate violence. And the walls of that home held every terrible detail. Forensic teams found blood that had seeped beyond Gannon's room, patterns that indicated he'd been moved, and clear signs someone tried to clean the scene. The home felt heavy, like the truth had soaked into the floors, and no amount of scrubbing or excuses could hide what had happened within those walls. The vehicle told its own story. GPS logs, mileage jumps, unexplained stops, hours-long gaps that didn't match Letitia's timeline. Investigators followed that trail, Colorado to Florida, and every single mile contradicted her claims. It showed a desperate attempt to hide a child instead of save one. And then came the discovery under that bridge in Florida. The suitcase containing the remains of a little boy who should have been playing video games, laughing with his siblings, or asking someone to tuck him in. When confirmation came that it was Gannon, it shattered whatever hope the world had been holding on to. By the time the trial finally came, the world already knew the truth. But now it had to be spoken out loud. Evidence laid bare. Expert after expert, walking the jury through the nightmare step by step. Every detail, every wound, every lie. The courtroom became a place where heartbreak met justice. Letitia tried one last tactic, an insanity defense. She claimed she wasn't in her right mind, that she didn't understand what she had done. But her actions told the truth. The cleanup, the transport, the disposal, the lies layered with calculation. This wasn't chaos. It was control. It was choice. Prosecutors argued that every step she took after harming Gannon proved awareness. The miles driven, the attempts to hide evidence, the manipulation of the public, the escape attempt during transport. Her behavior wasn't that of someone lost in delusion. It was someone trying to outrun consequences. Jurors listened. They watched her. They studied every detail the experts presented. And when they finally reached a verdict, it echoed the truth people already felt in their bones. Letitia Stauch was found guilty on all counts. No hesitation. No confusion. The evidence had spoken for Gannon when he couldn't. Her sentence, life without parole, brought a measure of justice but not healing. Nothing could undo what happened to Gannon. Nothing could erase the suffering he endured. Nothing could restore the trust he placed in someone who should have protected him. Justice can punish the guilty, but it cannot resurrect the innocent. After the verdict, Gannon's family spoke with a tenderness that broke the courtroom. His mother described his sweetness, his softness, the way he held on to her like he was still a little boy. His father stood beside her, grief carved into every part of him, mourning not just the loss of his son, but the destruction of the life they thought they were building. A community mourned with them. People who had searched for him. People who had prayed for him. People who had followed his story every day, hoping for a miracle that never came. They lit candles, wrote messages, held vigils. Because even though they never met him, they loved him through the grief of the people who did. Gannon's story didn't end in that courtroom. It continues in the way people remember him, not as a case, not as evidence, but as a little boy who loved video games, needed reassurance, laughed softly, and trusted the adults in his world. A child who should still be here, asking what's for dinner or begging for 5 more minutes of screen time. What happened to him forces us to confront the truth about violence inside families, how it hides behind walls, behind smiles, behind the people we least expect. His case became a reminder that danger doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes it walks through the front door holding a house key. And that's why we tell his story. Not for shock, not for views, but because his life mattered. His fear mattered. His final moments mattered. And the world failed him long before investigators ever knew his name. As long as we speak his story with truth and weight, he will never fade into a statistic. This is Sable with Unsealed Evidence. And Gannon, we carry your name with us. Your story shook the world for a reason. You deserved protection, comfort, love, and safety. And though justice came too late to save you, your memory continues to change hearts, shape conversations, and remind us why we fight for the truth. Let's unseal what really happened, and never forget the child at the center of it all. Every case has missing pieces, and we're here to find them. Unsealed Evidence digs into the documents, the timelines, the evidence they don't talk about. You can read every breakdown at unsealedevidence.com and follow us for updates, new findings, and deeper dives. We don't look away. We don't sugarcoat. We search until the truth shows itself. This is Unsealed Evidence.